Welcome, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the podcast by the Sons of Technology. My name is Joe Marquez, Director of Academic Innovation for CUE, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about some updates to some of your favorite applications. We're going to be talking about teachers and where they live and just some of the housing crises that we're seeing with educators. And then we're going to end a little bit talking about student teaching. You know, how are student teachers being utilized in your school? And do you kind of see that as free, I guess I want to say free labor when it comes to those student teachers coming in to your school? But before we do, let's go ahead and introduce our panel for the day. As I said, I'm Joe Marquez, and I'm currently the Director of Academic Innovation for CUE. And I just want to point out, don't forget, we do have Fall CUE coming up here very quickly. Fall CUE's coming up here on October 22nd and 23rd, and you can still get your seats for that amazing event. Go into fallcue.org. All right, and as always, my partner in innovation, Kyle Anderson. Kyle, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I am Kyle Anderson. I am a special education facilitator in Las Vegas. You can find me on Twitter at Anderson EdTech. Same thing for Instagram. You can also find me on Peloton at that same username. So if you're a Peloton user, you can friend me on there as well. But I also have a blog I haven't touched in a little bit at andersonedtech.net. And then I have a book called To the Edge: Successes and Failures to Risk-Taking that you can find on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and also through my publisher, EduMatch Publishing. And then joining us once again from the True North, Strong and Free, we got Roland Chidiak with us. Roland, introduce yourself, please.
I love that. True North, Strong and Free. Kyle and Joe, it is great to see you guys. Thanks for having me on again. My name is Roland Chidiak. I am at rchids on Twitter. I am a re-engagement teacher in Waterloo Region, and I'm also the co-host of the Decoded podcast and a proud CUE member. Happy to be here to talk to you guys about those topics.
Yeah, you are both proud CUE members. You know, we opened up the brand new CUE community portal at CUE.org, and the first 100 people who signed up for that received the official badge of CUE right here, and it was officially numbered, right? Hand numbered by myself. So yes, you both got one of those. So that's fantastic. And yeah, we got a really good show today. But I wanted to kind of cover a couple of the big events with some of your favorite apps that happened recently. Now, when I say recently, take that with a grain of salt. Recently, since our last broadcast. So about from August to current, some of the things that were introduced. And the first one I want to talk about is Canva. Canva is fast becoming one of my favorite tools out there. Great design tool, great tool for creativity. It's just a great tool that I like to use for a lot of different things in my personal life, but also for CUE, for a lot of the social media posts and stuff. And they made some big announcements at their Canva Create 2022 kind of fest they had this past week. One of them, I wasn't expecting this, and it's pretty neat. They have a website creator now, but it's a very simplistic website creator. It's a single page, so nowhere to direct to sub pages, but it's a single page, and that's pretty good if you're just getting into trying to promote a product or something, and you can get a URL directly off of Canva, then you can share it out. So if you're not like a Google Sites, kind of creator, Canva is a fun way to create. So they have that brand new way to create beautiful one-page websites. Pretty neat. Another thing they introduced a while ago, but they made the official announcement during their CanvaCon, was whiteboards. They have a really beautiful collaborative whiteboard creator on here where you can invite team members. But I have to say, though, it is not necessarily a true whiteboard. To me, a true whiteboard allows you to use digital ink and to sketch and to draw and to do those kinds of things. There is no digital inking option on this whiteboard. It's more of a kind of a cloud map, a mind map creator, but you can still use all the amazing, beautiful graphics within Canva. So it's pretty neat to be able to utilize that with your teams. And the last thing I want to say is they're really getting into video creation in Canva. You can bring multiple videos in. You can edit those videos. Now you can't like splice the video, but you can make the video shorter at the beginning and shorter at the end. But one of the cool things they have on there is instant background removal. So you could put a video on top of a video where one video, it's almost like green screening, but super simplistic. where you don't need to worry about chromatic keys or anything like that. So they have that background remover right in a video. So that was pretty neat to see as well. So Canva made a lot of cool things. Just go to canva.com and you can see it right there on their main bar of all the recaps of what was happening there. Do you guys use Canva at all? Is that something that interests you?
I used Canva a few years ago here and there, but it's just something that for what I would use Canva for, I can do easily in Google Slides or Google Drawings. So I don't typically use it, and I don't think to use it as a result of that. But I know that there's a lot of stuff that you can do with it that's really cool. And then one thing a lot of people don't realize with that too is that there is a premium version of Canva, and you can pay the money for that or whatever. But what a lot of people don't realize is that as an educator, if you're using an educator email address, you can register and get that free or that premium account for free. Yeah. So when you're going into Canva and you start looking around, they say, well, why don't you upgrade to this or whatever? There is a section of the website, or you can just type into Google real fast, Canva teacher account or something like that. And then you can get that premium account from Canva for free with your teacher account. It has to be like an EDU account, or and they'll instantly recognize if it's an EDU account. If it's not, like my school district account is not an EDU account. So there is and it was really quick. I like probably within hours, I had my account upgraded, because they just have to verify that as indeed a school district account. But so if you did not know that, definitely check that out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. One of the things I love about Canva is just the different things you can use it for. Like when I do other broadcasts for Q, and I should start doing it for this broadcast as well, but I can bring in graphics, right? That overlay on the video. When I just make these graphics with Canva, and I download it as a PNG without a background, and I can create these graphics right here and just easily add onto it. Right. And so that's what I love it for. It's really cool for creation and just a lot of the different things that I like to do it for. So if you're a Canva user, Canva made a lot of cool announcements. Definitely go and check that out. The next thing I want to talk about is Flipgrid. Right. And this was announced back at ISTE back at late June, early July. But their name now is Flip. It is no longer Flipgrid. It is just Flip. And my thought is this. My thought is they probably always wanted to call it Flip. But when Flipgrid came out, I think that, do you remember that video camera, the Flip video camera? You click it, a little USB came out. You just go, though before cell phones had really good cameras, Flip was a big thing in education, at least in my school.
We had like 50 of them at my school, where you could literally check out the box of them and have every kid in your class have one. The school I was at the time.
They were pretty neat for what they were at the time, right? But now with the advent of cell phones everywhere, there's no need for it, right? So I wonder if they had given up the flip.com address and Flipgrid jumped on it, right? So and it's also called Microsoft Flip now, so it's branded with Microsoft now. But they didn't really come out with a lot of new features, but they really cleaned up the web application. And I say that because they've been focusing so heavily on utilizing the app on a cell phone, because they know a lot of students go around with their cell phone, and so the web app hadn't really been updated too much. Now the video camera, the camera on the web app is like really seamless, really cool, really slick. You can find things much easier and much faster to make your videos that much better. So they really just refined the way that it looks. So that's pretty cool. So definitely go and check flip.com, which used to be flipgrid.com. And the last one that I want to show you is really near and dear to my heart, no pun intended. It's Nearpod. And the reason that I wanted to talk about Nearpod is because, number one, this was my gateway tech, getting other teachers into technology. I would show them, hey, you're using PowerPoint. Let me show you how easy it is. Turn that PowerPoint into a Nearpod, and then you can bake in questions or do an on-the-fly question. I mean, it was very low-hanging fruit, but it really amplified, oh, technology can help me. So it was always my gateway tech for teachers. But one thing that was lacking forever was the actual creation of slides on Nearpod. Like if you wanted to make a really good Nearpod, you either had to make it in Google Slides and import that in, or make it in PowerPoint and then import that in, because the slide creator in Nearpod was very mediocre. They've completely overhauled it. It's a beautiful slide creator now. You can do a lot in there now. I still think teachers are going to focus on making it in Google Slides or in PowerPoint, but if you want to go all in with Nearpod and create it directly in Nearpod, I think they've done a really good job at redesigning and upgrading their slide creator. So it's pretty neat. Pretty neat. Now, Kyle, I know that you are a Pear Deck user, and Pear Deck just had their PearCon, or pair this or pair that. I'm not quite sure if they had any updates. And I know you said in your position you're not really using it that much, but I just want the audience to know. Go check out peardeck.com and see what updates they announced during their PearCon, because I'm sure they announced some pretty good things as well. All right. Any other updates, gentlemen? Anything that you've heard on the periphery of anything that you've been using, or any tool like an upgrade or a new feature or anything like that? Because those are what I've researched and those are what I found, but there might be something that I missed.
I'm going to be honest. Like you said, in my new position, I just don't have the time really to look into new updates on different apps and programs, or whatever. So I'm not really aware of anything right now myself. And even Pear Deck, I'm a Pear Deck coach and I get the emails, but I mean, I'm literally just glossing them real fast to see if there's anything major, and nothing's sticking out to me right now. So it's still a great tool as far as I know. So, but yeah, I haven't been using it as much lately in my new role. So I do know that I get things from quizzes every now and then. So they're changing things all the time. So I'm not aware of anything major in it right now, but I'm sure they do a lot of changing in quizzes all the time. And same thing with Kahoot. They're changing things too. So there's all sorts of things out there that maybe some minor changes, but nothing really that's sticking out in my mind right now. Roland, how about you? Are you hearing or seeing anything?
You know what? I'm in a similar situation as you, Kyle. In my new position, I'm kind of all over the place and working one-on-one with kids. So, and right now with the startup, I'm not into actually sitting down and covering curriculum with kids in innovative ways. So I've not really heard anything, but I've not been, my ears haven't been open to those things these days. So I love what you guys have provided, but I can't offer anything at the moment.
Yeah.
No, I would say my biggest thing right now is that it's not anything that's new or innovative, but in my role, I work with a lot of spreadsheets, and the filter views on spreadsheets are my new best friend, where I'm looking at a spreadsheet with 300 plus entries of student information, but I need to know specific ones, like what students are receiving transportation, what students are on an alternative high school diploma. And rather than having to go through and just control F search for those things, I can create a filter view and see exactly who I need to see. So I've been using more of just those little tips and tricks inside of Google Sheets than I have anything at this point.
You know, I do love all the updates that are happening in Google Sheets. They'll be able to sort by color and things like that. It's pretty neat of what can happen. But there's one thing that the updates broke, and it really does cause me pain because I loved it, and that's Flippity. So Flippity.net used to have templates you could download, and you would adjust the templates, and you can turn that into a visual activity, whether it's flashcards or a spinning wheel of names or a seating chart. I liked that a lot, but it doesn't work anymore. Because of the way that Google updated their Google Sheets, it doesn't work the same way with Flippity. So now the only way you can use it, like the wheel of names on Flippity, is to like copy and paste it into the actual Flippity.net website. And I'll tell you why I found that out. Kyle, I was trying to take all my records from my spreadsheet at home and put it in a wheel of names, because sometimes it's hard for me to pick a record to listen to. So I wanted to click it, have this wheel, and have the wheel pick the record for me, but it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So that kind of caused me a little bit of pain when I tried to make that.
That is way more technologically advanced than just walking up to your shelf, closing your eyes, and just randomly picking one. That's hilarious.
Well, I wanted to be able to remove it from the queue and then, try to listen to all of them, but so that's that's it. The one last thing I want to say before we move on to our conversation about teachers and housing and things like that is there was one tool that I was wishing had an update. And I always wish this tool has an update. And that's Edpuzzle. It just seems to me that Edpuzzle has not updated in years. There was another tool that I used a long while ago that no longer exists. It was bought by another company, and you know how that things go. But it was Zaption. Zaption was an amazing video assessment tool, had a lot of cool features. I loved it. And then it was purchased by a company, and now they use it in the business sector, not the education sector. So, of course, I moved over to Edpuzzle. And it just seems like they haven't done a lot of updates. Now, you could tell me this. You could say, well, Edpuzzle just does what it does. You upload a video or you use a video in YouTube. You add multiple choice questions or free response questions. What else do you need it to do? I get that. I get that. It is what it is. But I would just like to maybe see just maybe a GUI overhaul or something like that. But that's just me being picky. But I always look. Whenever there's an update, I always go to Edpuzzle and see if they did anything. But there was nothing right there. Now, that's not knocking Edpuzzle. They do what they do, and it does it well. I just didn't see an update in that. All right. So that's our updates. That's the app updates. That's the beginning of the school year. Things have changing. But let's get into the nitty gritty of kind of what we're going to talk about. And the topic came from something I read in an article. And I'm not going to put location. I'm not going to type school district. But you could imagine in California, there's a lot of pockets that are very expensive to live in. Very expensive pockets, like the Bay Area, the San Diego area, the LA area. There's a lot of pockets where housing or apartments are very expensive. I mean, shoot, even here in Fresno, the Central Valley, housing is like $350,000 to $400,000 for a single family home with like no backyard. Right. Or even renting an apartment is going to run you $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Right. To me, that's even more than my house payment. Right. That's just astronomical. So, when I read this article, it really hurt because I think educators are a vital addition to our community. Whether that is new educators coming in or an educator transferring in from another district. And I truly believe educators should live in the community they teach in, right? You should live in the community in which you teach. I think there's a lot of other professions I'm not going to mention on this podcast because of different things. A lot of other professions that you are a part of, you should live in the community in which you work. A lot of other professions, I think that's key, but no more so than educators. But what we're seeing a lot of is there is communities in this state, and I'm sure in different pockets of the United States as well, where it's unaffordable. Unless you are making lots of money, you can't really purchase a house or a condo or even rent an apartment for the pay that you're getting as a teacher. And the article that I read said this. It says a school district is pleading with their community to please offer a room in their house for their teachers to live. And I thought to myself, I understand the plea, but to me, that's almost like a slap in the face to a teacher. Like they're not like a foreign exchange student staying for a short time. We're like, is there a family that's willing to put up this foreign exchange student while they're here experiencing America? Right? That's different. This is like we have a leader in this community looking to teach the youth of tomorrow or the youth of today, the leaders of tomorrow, and we don't pay them enough to live in our community. Is there anybody willing to rent them a room? To me, that's unacceptable because teachers go to school. They go to graduate school. I consider anything past the bachelor's graduate school. So a teaching certificate, a teaching credential, that's a graduate program. That's what I say. Teachers are professionals. And right now, starting teacher pay is one of the lowest starting pay for a graduate level professional college graduate. And that needs to change. If your school is in a community where the pricing is astronomical, you have to adjust your budget to pay teachers enough money for them to live there. And I'm not saying they need to buy a mansion, but they should be able to live comfortably off a single job. Teachers shouldn't have to pick up an extra job to be able to survive. They should be able to work in that community, work in that school, and pay a mortgage or pay a rent where they can still have money to live and feel comfortable. That's my opinion. So it kind of hurt a little bit just saying, hey, can you give this room to this poor teacher because they can't live in their community in which they teach. And this article also said that like they currently have teachers living so far out of the community. They have like an hour commute just to get to the school because they can't afford to live in the community. I want to hear your guys' thoughts, because to me, that's like, look, you got to treat your teachers better. And maybe the school district doesn't have the budget to pay more, but something's got to happen. I don't know what, but something's got to happen to where teachers can live in the community in which they teach, right?
Now, Roland, I'm kind of curious for you because Joe lives in California. I live in Nevada, and we're experiencing a similar situation with the cost of rents and purchasing a home here. But you live in a different country than us, but at the same time, though, you live within about an hour or so drive from one of the most expensive cities in the world, in Toronto. So, are you kind of seeing something similar there? I want to hear from you before I kind of dive into my thoughts on it.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kyle. When you told me about this, Joe, I think it's absurd. I'm bothered on a number of different levels. First of all, in my area, well, so here we have a thing here. Before the housing market went out of control, because it's out of control here too, um, people working in Toronto were buying houses in Waterloo region and just being cool with the hour commute, hour and 20-minute commute. And some people who live on my side of Toronto, it's maybe a 40, 50-minute commute, but they are buying houses here for a fraction of the cost of what they would get in Toronto. So basically, these families couldn't afford a house, a freestanding house in Toronto, because the prices were just out of control. And it's all relative. So here, when I find out what they paid for their house, it's like, oh. And they say, well, I work in Toronto. So if I didn't live here, we'd be living in a matchbox in Toronto. And that's two parents, professionals working full time with a couple of kids in school. It doesn't make sense. So again, the housing market here, it's starting to come down, but it was as nuts as it was where you guys are, because we've been communicating about it the whole time. So let me just put it that way. So Toronto, if we were out of control here in Waterloo region, Toronto is like out of this world, out of control. Okay. So there's that. But hearing about, and teachers in Ontario are very well paid. Okay. So when I hear about the people who do a similar job as me in some of the states in the United States, it breaks my heart to hear that they have 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. That is not my situation here in Ontario. Again, I get paid very well for what I do. But when I hear about my counterparts in the States, it upsets me. So hearing about what's happening in your neck of the woods, Joe, it blows my mind. That is just, I can't believe that that's happening to teachers. It's horrible because, like you said, we're the people molding minds for the future. If there are no teachers, what happens to these kids in their future, right? Like we're the ones who are helping build up the doctors, the lawyers, the plumbers, the electricians. Well, these days, the coders, the podcasters, the YouTubers. Like, we are doing that. We are building them up. How can you build people up when you can't even do a job that you can survive on? So that's where I'm sitting based on what you said. I've never heard of that before. If it happens here, if it happened here, it would be like a new teacher, brand new, just comes out of teachers college, nice and young, wants to get a job, doesn't care where they live as they kind of establish themselves and start saving their money, right? And building a career. But outside of that, I think it's absurd.
No, I agree. I mean, Kyle, what do you think? I mean, one of the reasons we started talking about this was, because we kind of had the same mindset. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking back to when I was a first year teacher and when I first moved to Nevada, and I thought at the time the rent I was paying 650 a month for a one bedroom apartment with my girlfriend, now wife. And we got through. We both had jobs. We were able to pay the bills, and I mean, we weren't exactly like spending a lot of money on groceries and going out having fun all the time because there wasn't a lot of extra money lying around. So there were definitely some times where you look at the bank account and we got a week till payday, and like, oh, we got about $17 to last until next payday. So, you know, but we survived. But now, while we were talking about this, I just a real quick Google search. I just typed in average rent for apartment in Las Vegas right now. And I found this website where it broke it down by one bedroom, two bedroom, so on and so forth. And the average rent for a one bedroom apartment, so what I had 17 years ago when I first moved here, that average rent is now up to almost 1,400 a month for a one bedroom apartment. And that, to me, that is just, it's disgusting and it's mind blowing that there's no way I would have never been able to survive if that was the way it was 17 years ago. But now, even though salaries have gone up, I can't imagine people like being any better off. They probably are still in a situation like me where it's like, oh, you are going to be eating some ramen and mac and cheese for a couple of days until payday comes along, that kind of deal. So, or you are going to have to, drive Uber or get some other side gig or something like that just to pay the rent. So, and when it comes to like buying a home, yeah, that's a whole other story right now, because I think the average cost for a home now in Las Vegas is like over $450,000. Which, if you're from California listening to this, you're like that's nothing. Like you have nothing to complain about. But because I know in a lot of areas in California, yes, the average cost of buying a home is much, much higher than that. But you're talking about a city where 10 years ago, 450,000 was getting you pretty much a mansion, where now all of a sudden it's pretty much a standard, like maybe 2-3 bedroom home is what that 450 is getting you at this point. I won't get into specifics how much I paid for my home, but let's just say I never guessed 20 years ago when I was in college, I would have ever paid this much for a home. And we're able to make it work because my wife and I have been both in the profession now for a while, and we are making a better salary at this point. But yeah, it's mind blowing that's what it's come down to with the cost of housing in this country. Well, really all over the place. Because I mean, Roland, you're saying in Canada, it's the same way, where rents and mortgages have gone up so much. Now, I do know that years ago, there was I believe this was in San Francisco, because the cost of housing in San Francisco has always been through the roof. I mean, a lot of your big cities like that, it's going to be expensive regardless. So your New Yorks, your Torontos, your San Franciscos, your Seattles, it's always going to be expensive. Years ago, I believe the school district in San Francisco had a deal with the city where there was rent controls for teachers. When they got hired in, the first 2 years, their rent couldn't go above a certain price level. But once that price control was removed 2 years later, most of those teachers couldn't afford to stay. So they had to leave and then go get housing out in one of the suburbs in the Bay Area and then commute into the city, whether that was using the BART system, the bus and train system they have there, or drive into the city to continue working at their school, or they just left. They just went to another district at that point. And, that goes along with that article you were talking about, Joe, where a lot of places they're saying like, we're going to lose these teachers unless people out of the goodness of their heart can rent a room out to a teacher. Which, I mean, when I'm traveling, I'm one of those people where if my hotel has a bed, a bathroom, and a lock on the door, for the most part, I'm okay. I mean, I don't want to stay in the Roach Motel by any means, but I'm not too picky, especially when I'm only staying for a night. But if all of a sudden my situation made it to where I had to rent a room out from somebody, like Airbnb style or something like that, that's just degrading at that point, in my opinion. So, and there is no magic wand that can be waved for this. There's not just going to be a bunch of money where we can start giving raises to teachers. But at the same time, though, the state governments need to do more, though, in order to make it better, to make districts pay more at the same time. So we're having that fight here in Nevada right now, where every 2 years when our legislature meets, there's always the fight about, like, what are you going to do to attract teachers and to pay them well enough to where they will actually stay? Because we just seem to have this revolving door of people leaving as a result of low salaries and then the rising cost of living.
Yeah, I mean, you hear all the time, it's not a teacher shortage, it's a salary shortage, right? I mean, and it kind of disturbs me when I hear people go, well, that's what teachers get paid. If you want to get paid more, don't be a teacher. Well, changing the world, making a decision to change the world by becoming a teacher shouldn't be determined on whether you can survive on being a teacher, right? Being a teacher should be a decision you make because you want to make better and do better and give back, right? It shouldn't be, well, I would do that and I think I'd be good at that, but I can't afford to be a teacher. I have to go and be a lawyer or this or that. We shouldn't eliminate possible fantastic teachers, possible mentors, possible game changers, because they just can't, they can't afford to become a teacher. We need to figure out a way where if you want to be a teacher, you're going to be a teacher and you're going to be well paid for being a teacher. And it needs to happen quickly, because I think I was talking to one of you two this morning about this is, we have a lot of veteran teachers who are about to retire, right? And these veteran teachers were able to purchase a house when they joined. They were able to kind of cement themselves into the community. They were able to do this. But when they retire, they're most likely going to stay. Not all of them. Some of them will probably get up and move out of state or something, but most likely they're going to live in that house. And the new teachers coming in, they're not going to be able to afford the surrounding area. So it's going to be a growing problem as our more veteran teachers age out of the profession, as they retire and new teachers come in. What are you going to have, a whole school of teachers that can't afford to live in the same community as the students they teach in? I mean, that is disturbing to me, that's even a possibility. There has to be something that we have to figure out right here, right? And I'm also tired of the talk track of saying, well, if we pay teachers more, that means we're going to be giving less to the students. Don't put the livelihood of an educator on the tiers of, well, if we give you more, we're going to have to take away from the kids. That is BS to me. Okay, there's got to be a way that we can figure it out where you can pay the teachers and they can still do an amazing job with the kids, with the salary and the funds that they have. I mean, I don't have the answer. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but there's got to be a way, especially in California, where I hear we have one of the largest surplus budgets of any years ever. I mean, there's got to be a way that we can make sustainable growth in teacher salaries across the board. There's got to be a way. Like, Roland, I want to hear from you. Do your, like, it seems like to me that communities and school districts determine the pay for teachers. And I also know that there's unions that help negotiate those pays and things like that. But in your area, is pay dictated by the province, by the government, by what is the pay dictated by? And is it changed based upon where they live and stuff like that?
So we have a system here in Ontario where when you become a teacher, you apply to I don't know what to call it, an organization called Quaco, QECO. And when you apply to Quaco, what happens is that you send your school transcripts to them, and they look over your transcripts and they see what courses you have, and if you've got a graduate degree or the different degrees you have, and then they tell you what level you're at in terms of pay. So there's a grid. It's a 10 or 11 year grid, and then there's 4 sections on the grid. So what happens is, to move up the grid, you have to put in your time. But depending on where you begin and where you end on that 10-year grid, you have to have a rating from Quaco that establishes what you're going to get paid. So they do all that, and then you get a job with a district, and then the district has to pay you what Quaco says you're worth, so to speak. So, for example, when I started teaching, I had my undergraduate degree, my teaching degree, which allows me to get a teaching certificate. In Ontario, you need that. And then I had a graduate degree. So when I applied to Quaco, they wrote back and said, you are at the top level. So now that you enter into teaching and you move up the grid over the 10 years, you're always going to be at the top of the grid as you move up. Whereas my wife, she had her undergraduate degree and her teaching degree, and Quaco said, so there's 4 levels. I was at the fourth, she was at the third. So then they tell her, if you would like to move up to the fourth, these are the courses you need to take. And once you take those 3 or 4 courses, send us the transcript proof that you have these courses, and we'll bump you up. And then your school board will have to pay you more. So that's how we get paid here in Ontario. That's what dictates what we're worth yearly. Now, I don't want to get political, but what I do want to say is that obviously, some political parties that may be in power, they do different things with education, and they decide where they're going to cut back and or where they're going to provide more money. And without getting into details over that, I just think, how do you create a society of people who can think critically, analyze things, and innovate and create if you don't foster that while kids are in school? And so I guess you can tell my bend on it is that there needs to be an investment. You need to invest in teachers in order to invest in the kids. Some people don't agree, and that's fine. But I don't see how you're supposed to attract people to this profession. Really good people, by the way. Like, I've seen good people leave. And when I started my career 21 years ago, I would have never imagined that today I'd see such a teacher shortage, and I'd see people saying, I'm not even going to bother because I see what you guys are going through. And again, here, pay's not the issue. The issue is, workload and just navigating a system and maybe not having enough time to do it right. That's the kind of the vibe I'm getting. It's not the pay. So when we talk about teacher pay, um, I'm one of those people that believes more money should be put into education, but I understand that not everybody feels that way. The other thing I want to say before I stop is that, when I hear it all the time, school boards have these budgets, and here in Ontario, most of that budget is eaten up by teacher salaries. So people say, well, look at where all the money's going. Like, well, yeah, that's where the money's going because you need humans to stand in front of these kids and teach them. And if you want them to stay, you want them to be secure and not have to worry about that aspect of their life, you have to pay them. So it is, even I've looked at it and I said, oh, okay, 85% of my district's budget, I'm making that number up, but it's pretty high. 85% is teacher salary. Well, you need teachers. So if you're going to cut back on that, you're going to lose people. And if you lose people, you're not going to be able to do all these great things that you want to do. Even though they think they can make it happen, you need the human resources. You need the people with experience and education to go in there and to help these kids learn so that they can go out and make our world 10 times better than what it is.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because all the districts that I've looked into, they kind of have a same kind of scale, right? The years of service you move up, and then your amount of units you move over, right? But the difference is every district has different pays for those levels, right? And then some districts go all the way up to like 25 years. Every year you get to go up. Some of them every year up to 10 you go up, and then you're stuck until 15, stuck until 20, stuck until 25. Like then they're tiered at that point. You don't move up until every 5 years. Some top out at 110,000 for full service. Some top out at 75,000, right? I mean, so it's all dependent upon what district you're going into. And so it really does take some research. If you're looking for a new district, looking for a move, looking for a place to go, and you're looking on something like EdJoin, which is kind of the job market for education here in California, you have to go in and then look at that salary schedule. Okay, you're starting me at this, but I'm going to go and check that salary schedule and compare that with the district that's right next door, right? because it can be a huge difference. Just right next door might be a $25,000 difference in top salary level.
That-
It's interesting to me that it's all over the map, right? I love the fact that you have a single entity that says, hey, no, if you have this many years of service and this many units, if no matter what district you go to, this is what you're guaranteed. So if you want to work up to that, go for it, right? And here it's like, I don't know.
It's wild. That's when you explain it that way, it's wild. Because if you could go to District A or District B, and District B is going to pay you 25,000 more dollars, and they're going to take you, and everything else is equal. I don't know why you wouldn't go. I really don't. Like when I started here, it was funny because I was brand new and I was working with new people too. And one day we were talking about pay, and they're like, "What are you getting paid?" And I told them, and they're like, "Whoa, how could you be getting that?" I said, "Well, I have a master's degree." And they're like, "Oh," because then they're like, "Well, I'm not going to go out and get a master's degree just to make that much more money." But I was like, I just came into it like I had everything I needed. And my wife always jokes that if it wasn't for me saying to her, "Let's go, we've got these summers off, we don't have kids. So like, why don't you take a couple of summers, take a couple of courses each summer? It's gonna hurt to start, but when we're older and we own a home and we've got kids, we never have to worry about going back and doing any of that stuff because it gets tough." Like I know you guys know people our age who go out and get a master's degree or whatever. It's tough because then you got kids, you have all kinds of responsibilities. So I remember, yeah, my wife would say, "Well, if it wasn't for Roland kind of, nudging me, I wouldn't have done it." I said, "No, no, let's both get the units we need so that we can max out. So the only way I can make more money now is if the government gives us a raise. If they don't, then I sit where I'm at, and that's where I'm at. That's how it works in Ontario."
Well, and where I'm at too, it's a similar deal where there's ways to move up. We call them column moves because on the salary schedule, once you get to the bottom of a certain column, the only way you can move over to the next column is by participating in this very convoluted and cumbersome system of it's not as simple as just like going out and getting a master's or taking a few college courses or whatever so you can move over. It's very convoluted and complicated and confusing, and insert other C word to describe it, whatever. And I'm just kind of at the point where salary wise, I'm doing pretty well. And I've got a few more years where I'll get my automatic yearly cost of living raise and whatnot. But then I'll top out in a few years on that column. But part of me is like, I don't know if I really want to necessarily put in all this extra work in order to move into another column. So I know at some point there's going to be a negotiation to raise teacher pay anyway. So I'm kind of banking on that and I'm at year 18. So if I was in year like 2, yeah, it'd be another story, looking to move columns and whatnot. But the way my district makes it to where you have to provide all this evidence and all of these hours, and it just to me right now, I have other things going on professionally and personally that I just don't see the benefit of doing that just to move over another column. So, but you're saying about how you've got all of these districts like in just a really small area around you, completely different where I'm at. My state, we only are allowed to have one district per county. It's just something that they wrote into the Constitution of the state back in 1864, and it's never been changed. And you do have, it's election season. So right now, all these politicians are talking about, so on one side of it, they're saying we need to break up the school district in Las Vegas into smaller school districts. But then the other side is saying, well, like, I understand where you're coming from, but once you start breaking the district up, you're going to get a lot of inequity because you're going to have these pockets of areas of town that are lower income that are not going to get the same kind of funding that other areas of town that are more affluent are going to have. So that brings about other issues. Sure, are we a district that is 320 some thousand students and there seems to be a lot of bureaucracy? Absolutely. Having smaller districts would be nice, but that comes then comes all the other problems too of the inequity as well. So there's no once again there's no magic wand just to fix everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's truth to that. I mean, just look at the smaller communities in California, and then the larger communities, and I mean, It's all about leadership and everything. There's so many ins and outs of this. And again, like we said at the beginning of this, there's no one answer to it, but it needs to be talked about. And I think one of the biggest surprises to me today was when Roland said he had somebody ask him how much he was getting paid, and without blinking his eye, he told them. And I think we live in a culture where we try to hide how much we're getting paid. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to tell people how much we're getting paid, or administrators don't want to tell you how much this other person's getting paid. I think that's in the job market in general. The people want to keep that close to their vest for some odd reason, but it needs to be talked about, and teacher pay needs to be talked about because, Kyle, like, I want to transition to our next topic, student teaching, right? We have students that want to become teachers, right? Knowing all the hardships that they're coming into, knowing the pay and all this stuff, we still have students, God bless them, still going to school to become teachers, be that next wave of teachers. And those colleges look for schools to place these teachers into to learn from the quote unquote master teachers, right? And I say quote unquote because I was a master teacher, like my third year of teaching. I thought I was good, right? But looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't have considered myself a master teacher at that point, right? But when you're getting a student teacher, you're really supposed to be a mentor to them. Watch them teach, sit them down, explain what they did good, explain what they can do better, assist them on questions. But that hasn't been my experience when watching some of these. Sometimes master teachers, while the student teacher's teaching, master teacher might be grading work, right? And then just give very little. Oh, you did good, or you need to get their attention a little bit more. I mean, what do you think, Kyle? Should there be a reinvention of what it means to be a student teacher? And you told me a story a little bit too about how you were student teaching, and they're like, you know what, we need you to sub. Can you come and sub this class? Or it's interesting. What are your thoughts on student teachers entering a school and basically working for free because it needs to be a part of their credentialing process?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start from the beginning with that then. So when I was student teaching back in 2005, I was student teaching at a school that was 30 miles outside of the nearest like town of significance. I mean, the school was in this small little town called Evan Junction, which the town was a crossroad. That's pretty much what it was. There was a bar on one corner, there was a gas station on the other corner, and there was a school on another corner, and then I think there was a field on the other. So there wasn't much in this town. And K through 12 is a school of about 350 students is all. It's just a little tiny town. That's where I was student teaching. And I had gone out there in the semester prior to student teaching I had to do observation hours. So that my university arranged it to where you're going to do your observation hours at the place you're going to student teach. So I actually got to go into my mentor teacher's room and observe and get my observation hours that way. In the meantime, that school, because it was 30 miles outside of town, they had a really hard time getting subs. And this was almost 20 years ago. Subs were short for this school. So I started subbing a couple days a week at that school leading up to my student teaching. So I pretty much knew every kid in the school going into student teaching because of the time I was spending there. Sub pay was nothing. It was, I thought it was great because I was a kid in college working I worked full time that semester prior to student teaching because I only had to take 7 credits, but I was only making $55 a day to sub at this school, which even then that was the lowest for any district around there. And it was one of those deals, like hindsight, you're like, really, you're struggling to find subs. Maybe you should up your pay a little bit because nobody wants to drive 30 miles to go do it. But for me, it was one of those deals where like, I got to be here anyway. I'm going to make some money doing it. Well, then the university policy was that during my student teaching from late January through middle of April, I could sub 10 days outside of the classroom in which I was doing my student teaching. The principal at that school pulled me aside leading into it and said, what your university does not know is not going to kill them, right? So that was basically the unspoken, if we need you to sub, we're going to pull you to sub, because we can't get subs. So there were some weeks where I would go out of a 5-day week, I was in my student teaching classroom once because I was subbing the rest of the time. And it was nice because I was making that extra money, but it was also nice because I was seeing a lot of different grade levels and scenarios. Because I mean, one day I could be subbing kindergarten, the next day I could be subbing like the high school kids because it was all in the same building. But when it was all said and done, did that really prepare me for my own teaching job? I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm okay now, but yeah, that first couple of years was pretty rough, but it was going to be rough anyway. I mean, who are we kidding? So
Yeah.
my thought is that yes, you end up getting almost free labor out of student teachers. They're basically doing the job of the teacher in the classroom, like especially those ones you say where they're not really doing anything. They're just sitting there reading the newspaper or scrolling through their phone now in this day and age, and they're not really doing anything while the student teacher does everything. So is there a way that student teachers could be paid? I think that would be a nice first step. And I'm not saying that they need to be paid a full sub day, paycheck or something like that, but paying them a little bit, because when you're student teaching, you're not working another job. I mean, unless you're really, really desperate and in need of money. I worked a couple days a week I would work the weekends pretty much when I was student teaching. I would go in Thursday night for a couple hours, nothing big. And then Friday night I would work. Saturday I would work pretty much all day. And then Sunday I would work the morning shift so I could be done by afternoon and rest up for the following week. So I wasn't making the money I really needed to. And then but the subbing supplemented that, which was nice. So, but being able to pay a student teacher would be nice, especially considering, if you think about it, you're paying tuition to get those credits for student teaching. So my student teaching was 12 credits, which was a full load when it comes to paying for school. Like, I was a full semester load of credits I had to pay for. So I was basically paying to go work somewhere for free, which, you can argue it's like, well, no, that's just what you have to do. It's the way it's always been done. But it's hard for student teachers to be able to survive unless they've been saving up for a long time. And not everybody's able to save up to live for 4 months where they can't really work. Well, then on top of that, though, I truly believe that student teaching should be a full school year, not just half the school year. I feel that you need to be able to see a full school year through as a student teacher so you can be better prepared. And that includes the days leading up before school starts, those like few days of professional development. I think a student teacher should have to report that week before and then do the full year. But again, now you're talking in that having to pay the university for the credits. That's a full semester or two full semesters right there. And then now you're talking a person is a full year not going to be able to work. So again, I don't have an answer. I believe those are things that need to be changed, but right now there's no great answer for that.
No, I mean, there's not. I mean, I will tell you, as a student in the credential program, you need to be in the classroom. That is the only. I mean, there's only so much a semester class on classroom management can give you compared to being actually in a class trying to manage students, right? I mean, and you're right. Even a full year of student teaching isn't preparing you for teaching. I mean, I don't think you ever really get your footing as a teacher until year 5. And I think that's also why we have a lot of teachers that quit prior to year 5. They just can't handle it. They're not ready. Or it's just not what they expected. I'll put it that way. But, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a reason in California, there is a law that says you can't have unpaid interns. There's a reason. You can't have unpaid interns in California because that is like free labor. You can't do that. You have to pay the interns. But I think you get around it as a student teacher because it's a class, right? If you're not an intern, this is a class. You're a student teacher, and you're supposed to be working with the master teacher, so you're not running the entire class. It's a learning experience, right? But depending on the master teacher you get, or let's face it, you don't think your instance was an isolated instance, right? Back in 2005, where they say what the university doesn't know is not going to hurt them. You don't think that's an isolated incident. I wonder right now, especially with the teacher shortage, especially with the sub shortage, is that happening to student teachers right now? I don't know. I can't say it is because I don't know. I'd love to look into it. I'd love any student teachers that are out there. What is your experience like? What are you doing? Because I would really love to know about it. But what I do know is this: student teaching, I think, is a very important part of the learning curve when you become a teacher. You have to experience that. You have to experience behavior of students. How are you going to handle that? How are you going to manage the collection and distribution of assignments? How are you going to handle the grading? But it has to happen in concert with your student, with your master teacher. You should not be the one doing all of the work, and you shouldn't be considered an extra hand on the campus, right? For example, if you have yard duty, don't go and send your student teacher out to yard duty. I see that all the time. You go with the student teacher on yard duty. They don't just send them out there and say, you have to learn sometime, go do yard duty. Come on. Right. And I saw that all the time. I would see teachers say, I'll be the master teacher, just because they thought they can get a little bit of, extra going on. But there has to be something, right? What is it? I don't know. I'd love to work with universities to kind of revamp that system. I'd love to have the Q community work together to help come up with a revamped system. But a system has to be put in place where, maximum benefit for both people involved, the school and the student, because it really does come down to, we need teachers. Teachers are important, and they're not kids, right? They're training to be professionals. And once they are done with the credentialing program, they should be treated as such. They should be paid as a professional, treated as a professional, and have continued growth as any professional should have throughout their career, as supported continued growth by their managers and administration. So, before we end this episode, Kyle, any final comments, any conclusions, any final words you'd like to give the audience?
Not really. Today was one of those episodes, but outside of our updates, it was more of a, I don't want to call it a gripe session, but more of like these are issues we see, and we don't have answers, but we definitely recognize there are problems that need to be solved. So, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners have a lot of similar quote unquote gripes as well. But just talking about it sometimes is therapeutic.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much Twitter chat on this I can handle, right? I would rather have a conversation about it and then have it open to people to talk about it, just because I see it all the time. And how many times do we actually discuss it in an open forum, besides 240 characters or 280 characters in a quick response? It needs to be addressed in a little bit longer form than that. But I think we've said it before, and I think I'll say it again. Teachers are the most important people in the history of the world. For many people, they are there for more time in the day than you can spend with your students at night. I mean, I have to admit that same thing. We send our daughter to school. She gets there at 8. I pick her up at 5. Give her dinner, and she's in bed by 8. I see my daughter probably 4 hours in that time span, and she's gone for 8 to 9 hours in that time span. I am relying on professional adult individuals in the upbringing of my child. And I would hope that those individuals have their full attention on my child, not thinking about their second job, not thinking about where are they going to have enough money in their paycheck to pay their bills. I expect a professional, highly qualified, and well-paid individual to be raising a well-rounded, critical thinker that I want my daughter to be, because it really is a community that is bringing up our youth. And we have to make sure that we have high-quality, well-paid individuals bringing up our youth. So as a father, I just want to say thank you to the teachers who are out there. I want to say thank you to the emerging educators that are going through the credentialing program to become game changers. And I want to say teaching is a fantastic field for anybody who's looking at becoming a teacher. But we do have issues and we do have things that need to be addressed, and they can only be addressed through conversation. And that's why we like to spark that conversation. So if you're watching this, please post in the chat what you would do. If you're watching on the Twitters, on the YouTubes, on the Facebooks, just let us know. What do you think about this conversation, good or bad? Because without conversation, nothing changes ever. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your September. Most of you are probably about a month deep into your 9-month teaching stint or 10-month teaching stint. So keep going, keep pushing, and keep changing the world. One student, 1 hour, one classroom at a time. From us at Sons of Technology, we hope you have a wonderful and fantastic Sunday or week whenever you're hearing this. Have a good one.